when trying too hard becomes the problem. You do everything right. You plan. You push. You show up. You try harder than most people ever will. And yet, something still feels off. You're tired. Not just physically, but deeply, quietly tired. Tired of always having to be on. Tired of fixing everything, proving everything, controlling everything. You've done the work, followed the plans, pushed through every doubt, and still, peace feels like something you have to chase. But what if peace was never meant to be chased? Maybe you've been living like the world depends on your effort, on your constant doing. But the truth is, the more you push, the more life pushes back. There's a quiet truth you've suspected all along. That forcing things only creates more friction. That trying to control everything, your future, your relationships, even your thoughts, is what's draining your spirit. So what if the way forward isn't more force, but less? There's an ancient path, one that teaches how to move without struggle, how to act without forcing, how to live without exhausting yourself to death. It's called Wu Wei. At first glance, it might sound like some abstract philosophy, but it's not. It's something you've already tasted in moments when life flowed without effort, when your words came out right without overthinking, when an idea appeared in stillness, not stress, when something simply worked and you didn't have to force it. In Taoism, Wu Wei is known as the principle of effortless action, but don't mistake that for passivity or laziness. It's not doing nothing, it's doing without strain, like a river finding its way around a rock, like a tree growing towards sunlight without needing a schedule. And in Buddhism, there's a deep resonance. The Buddha never taught us to try harder. He taught us to wake up, to see clearly the causes of our suffering, and to let go. Suffering, he said, comes not from life itself, but from our craving, our constant need to control, to achieve, to grasp at what we want and push away what we fear. And here's the paradox. The more you grasp, the less you hold. The more you force, the more resistance you create. So maybe the answer isn't in another strategy, another plan, another round of self-improvement. Maybe the answer is in noticing the tightness and loosening your grip, not giving up, but letting go. When the mind is still, truth becomes clear. When the heart is open, life starts to flow. And when you stop trying so hard, you might find that peace wasn't missing after all. It was simply waiting for space. You don't have to earn your way into stillness. You don't have to prove yourself worthy of rest. You don't need to conquer life to live fully. You only need to soften, to listen, to trust that there is another way, one that doesn't cost your soul. This is where the journey begins. Not with more doing, but with finally allowing. Not with tightening your will, but with opening your heart. Sometimes, the most powerful shift happens not when you add something new, but when you stop holding on so tightly to everything you thought you needed to be. Wu Wei isn't doing nothing. It's doing without forcing. We live in a world that worships effort. If you're not hustling, grinding, or pushing harder, you're seen as lazy. So when someone tells you to stop forcing, it feels wrong. It feels like failure. That's why most people misunderstand Wu Wei. They hear effortless action and assume it means doing nothing. But Wu Wei is not about sitting still and watching life pass you by. It's about moving without friction, acting without ego, living without constant resistance. You felt this, haven't you? That moment when you tried everything to fix a relationship, but the more you tried, the more it slipped away. Or when you stayed up late overthinking a decision, only to wake up exhausted, still unsure. And then, the clarity came when you finally stopped trying. That's not failure. That's alignment. Wu Wei teaches us that not all action is wise action. Sometimes, what looks like progress is just panic in disguise. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. It's not passivity. It's not avoidance. It's awareness. Like a skilled surfer riding the wave, they don't fight the ocean. They read it. They feel it. And when the moment is right, they move. Wu Wei is that kind of movement. It's responsive, not reactive. It's presence in motion. It's when you act, not from fear, not from pressure, but from calm, grounded clarity. Taoist sages compared it to water, soft, yielding, yet unstoppable. Water doesn't force. It adapts. It flows. And yet, over time, it shapes mountains. That's not weakness. That's quiet power. Buddhism carries this same wisdom. The Buddha didn't say conquer your thoughts. He said, observe them. He didn't tell us to fix everything, but to let go of clinging and watch suffering dissolve on its own. True transformation doesn't come from more effort, but from less resistance. The more you try to control everything, the more anxious you become. The more you chase, the further peace runs. But when you stop fighting, when you allow, when you trust, life begins to respond differently. To live with Wu Wei is to live with ease. Not because life is always easy, but because you've stopped making it harder than it needs to be. So pause, breathe, feel where you're still pushing when you don't need to. Because maybe the question isn't what more can I do, but what can I finally stop forcing? Nature never hurries, yet everything gets done. Have you ever felt like life is moving too fast, but you're still falling behind? You wake up to alarms, race through your morning routine, check your phone before your breath, and even on days when you do everything right, you still feel like you're not enough, not ahead, not okay. But here's the thing, nature never sets alarms. It doesn't rush. It doesn't grind, and yet it never fails to bloom, to rise, to return. Everything happens in its time, quietly, effortlessly, without your schedule. Look at the sky. The sun doesn't fight to rise. The moon doesn't beg for space. Trees grow slowly, patiently, even when no one is watching. And rivers, they don't struggle to reach the ocean. They simply flow. This is Wu Wei, the wisdom of doing without forcing, of moving without rushing, of allowing without giving up. And maybe this sounds poetic, even impractical, to someone living in the chaos of modern life. So let me tell you a story. There was a woman I once met after a talk. She had been working in a high-pressure law firm for years. Sleepless nights, weekend emails, no vacations. She did everything by the book until her body gave out. Her doctor called it adrenal fatigue. Her therapist called it burnout. She called it breaking. She took a sabbatical, moved near a forest trail, and for the first time in years, stopped trying to fix her life. She walked. She breathed. She sat under trees. And somewhere in the silence, she told me, I stopped rushing, and nothing fell apart. In fact, for the first time, something came together inside me. Nature became her teacher, and through it, she remembered her own rhythm. That's what Wu Wei invites us into, not passivity, but participation, with life's natural timing. Like water, we flow best when we stop fighting gravity. Like the seasons, we bloom best when the conditions are right, not when the calendar tells us to. Lao Tzu called water the highest virtue because it yields, yet transforms. In Buddhism, this echoes through the law of dependent origination. Things arise, not from will, but from conditions. And the wise don't force change, they prepare the ground. So ask yourself, what are you trying to rush? What would happen if you stopped measuring your growth by how fast it looks and started trusting how deep it's becoming? You don't have to outrun life. You only have to remember, nature never hurries, yet nothing is left undone. The more you try to control, the more you suffer. We all want things to go a certain way. We plan, we organize, we prepare, we try to steer life toward the outcomes we believe are best. And when things don't go our way, we try harder, we grip tighter, we step in, speak up, fix, push, tweak, worry. We call it being responsible. We call it being smart. But underneath it all is fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. Fear that if we don't control everything, everything will fall apart. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control life, the more out of control you feel. The more you tighten your grip, the more things slip through your fingers. And slowly, without realizing it, control becomes a cage. Your mind races. Your body tenses. Your relationships become strained. And you begin to suffer. Buddhism calls this suffering dukkha, the tension, the unease that arises when we resist the flow of reality, when we want life to be different than it is. The Buddha didn't say suffering comes from what happens to us. He said it comes from our attachment, our craving, our aversion, our clinging to how we think things should be. And control is often just clinging in disguise. Think about the last time you tried to control a conversation. Maybe you interrupted, tried to prove a point, or got frustrated when the other person didn't respond the way you hoped. Did it bring more connection or more distance? Or maybe you've tried to control your future, planning every step, every outcome, only to find yourself anxious, exhausted, and still unsure. You can't force clarity. You can't schedule peace. Wu Wei offers us another way. It doesn't mean we become passive. It means we become wise. We learn to act without gripping, to engage without attachment, to trust the process, even when it's not unfolding the way we imagined. The Tao teaches us, bend like the reed, and you will not break. Water doesn't control the riverbank. It adapts, it flows, and over time, it transforms everything it touches. The more we try to control people, the more they resist. The more we try to control timing, the more we stress. The more we try to control outcomes, the more we fear failure. But when we loosen our grip, just a little, we make room for something greater than our fear. We make room for wisdom. There's a quiet strength in surrender. Not giving up, but giving in to the truth of the moment. Trusting that even if things don't go your way, they might still go the right way. You don't have to control everything to be okay. You don't have to manage life into perfection to be at peace. Sometimes, the most powerful step you can take is the one where you step back. So take a breath. Feel where you're holding on too tightly. And ask yourself, gently, what would happen if I let go just a little? Rest isn't laziness, it's wisdom. In a culture that glorifies hustle, rest can feel like failure. We're taught that success comes from pushing harder, doing more, staying busy. We admire people who sacrifice sleep, skip meals, and keep going even when they're falling apart. No pain, no gain, they say. But what if that's not strength? What if that's self-neglect? Somewhere along the way, we confused exhaustion with achievement. We began to believe that slowing down meant falling behind. But nature tells a different story. The seasons don't rush. The sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day. Even the ocean rests between tides. And yet, everything gets done. Wu Wei reminds us that there's a difference between effort and force, between activity and alignment. True power doesn't come from constant action. It comes from knowing when to act and when to stop, when to move forward and when to return to stillness. In Buddhism, the middle path is not a path of extremes. It's a path of balance. The Buddha himself took time to sit, to rest under the Bodhi tree. And in that stillness, enlightenment arose. Not from striving, but from presence. But rest isn't just physical. It's also mental, emotional, even spiritual. How often do we rest our minds? How often do we let our thoughts be, without trying to fix or analyze or chase them? Rest can be silence, a walk without your phone, a breath you actually feel, a moment when you stop doing and simply exist. I once met a man who had built a wildly successful company, but he looked tired, even in his smile. When I asked him what he truly wanted, he didn't say more money, more status, or even more time. He said, "I just want to feel like I can stop and still be enough. That's what rest gives us. Not just recovery, but reconnection, a return to ourselves, to our bodies, to the moment. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. It's what makes true productivity possible. Without rest, action becomes scattered, reactionary, and stressful. But with rest, we act from clarity, from alignment, from peace. Wu Wei teaches that the most effective movement often arises from stillness, like an archer pulling back the bow, like the pause before a dancer leaps, like the silence between musical notes. The stillness is not absence, it's what gives form and meaning to everything else. You don't have to earn rest by burning out. You don't have to wait until you're broken to slow down. Rest isn't a luxury. It's a form of wisdom, a spiritual reset, a quiet, radical act of trust. So take it, without guilt, without explanation, without apology. Because when you rest, you don't fall behind. You return to yourself, to life, to what actually matters. Life has its own timing. Can you trust it? We live in a world that tells us we're always late. Too late to start over. Too late to catch up. Too late to make it. And so we rush. We force decisions. We try to speed up growth, healing, success, even love, as if life were a race and we're already behind. But timing is not a schedule. It's a rhythm. Nature never asks, "Am I on time?" The tree doesn't panic if its leaves haven't turned. The bird doesn't question when to migrate. The moon never apologizes for being full or new. Everything unfolds according to conditions, not pressure, not deadlines, not fear. So why do we doubt our own timing? Sometimes you don't get what you want, not because you don't deserve it, but because it's not yet time. Sometimes life withholds, not as punishment, but as protection. And sometimes the delay is the lesson. Wu Wei teaches us to stop forcing the moment, to wait when it's not yet ripe, to act when the energy is clear. There's no wisdom in rushing what needs time to unfold, and there's no peace in demanding clarity from a confused mind. I once spoke with a young artist who had just quit her job to pursue her passion full-time. But after a few months, she felt stuck, uninspired, anxious, doubting her decision. She told me, "Maybe I made a mistake." I asked her, "Are you failing, or are you still becoming?" She paused, and in that pause, something softened. We forget that growth is invisible at first. Seeds stay hidden underground long before they sprout. Healing happens quietly before it becomes obvious. And sometimes, standing still is not wasting time. It's preparing for what's next. The Buddha spoke of patience as one of the highest virtues. Not passive waiting, but mindful trust, in knowing that things will ripen when they're ready. That no flower blooms faster because we beg it to. That wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers when the noise has settled. To trust life's timing is to accept that we don't control the clock. That peace comes not from rushing, but from listening, observing, feeling the quiet signals that say, "Not yet," or "Now." This isn't easy, especially when the world moves fast, when others seem ahead, when you feel pressure to act. But the path of wisdom isn't paved with urgency. It's walked with presence. So if you feel behind, pause. If nothing is working, wait. If the way is unclear, rest. Because life has its own timing. The real question is, can you trust it? True meditation is effortless awareness. When most people hear the word meditation, they imagine something rigid, sitting perfectly still, controlling every thought, trying to be calm, trying to silence the mind. But here's the truth. The more you try to control your thoughts during meditation, the more restless you become. Because meditation isn't about control, it's about awareness. True meditation is not another task to perfect. It's not another performance. It's not a tool to fix yourself. It's simply the practice of being here, fully, honestly, without force. It's a return to the present moment, not by chasing it, but by letting go of everything else. Imagine watching clouds move across the sky. You don't try to stop them. You don't chase one cloud or wish for a different one. You just watch. That's what awareness is. That's what the Buddha meant by mindfulness. Not straining to be peaceful, but gently recognizing what's already happening right now. I once met a man who said, "I tried meditating, but I'm just not good at it. I can't stop thinking." I smiled and told him, "That means you're doing it right." Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about seeing them without getting caught. Thoughts will come. Emotions will rise. The mind will wander. And each time it does, you come back. Not with judgment, not with effort, but with presence. This is Wu Wei in practice, the art of effortless awareness. You don't force concentration. You don't demand stillness. You allow. You notice. You breathe. And slowly, something begins to shift. The chatter in your mind softens. Not because you silenced it, but because you stopped feeding it. In Buddhism, this is called sati, bare awareness. A kind of alert, gentle noticing that doesn't interfere. It watches without clinging. It listens without reacting. And in that space, you begin to see clearly. Not just your thoughts, but your habits, your patterns, your fears. And with that clarity comes compassion. True meditation is not about achieving some enlightened state. It's about remembering what it feels like to be real. To sit with your breath, your body, your emotions, exactly as they are. No pretending, no fixing, just being. And from that place of stillness, action becomes clearer. Life becomes lighter. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop striving and start seeing. You begin to live, not from your thoughts, but from your awareness of them. So if meditation has ever felt like something you're failing at, let this be your permission. You're not here to master meditation. You're here to let meditation soften the way you meet yourself. Let it be simple. Let it be kind. Let it be enough to just notice and breathe. Love doesn't grow in control, but in space. Love is one of the most beautiful things we seek, and yet, it's often the thing we try to hold on to the tightest. We want love to stay, so we manage it. We want people to love us back, so we overgive. We want our relationships to feel safe, so we control every detail. How often they text, how they speak, what they choose. But love doesn't bloom in a cage. It grows in space. Real love, like anything in nature, needs room to breathe. A flower can't open if you press its petals. A bird won't return if you trap it in your hands. And no matter how well-intentioned our efforts, the more we control, the more love begins to suffocate. We often confuse control with care. We think that managing someone's choices means we're protecting them. That sacrificing ourselves means we're loving deeply. But control doesn't come from love. It comes from fear. Fear of loss. Fear of rejection. Fear that we're not enough unless we're needed. Wu Wei reminds us that true connection is effortless. That when we release the need to possess or shape someone else, we allow love to move freely, like water flowing between two open palms. The more we let go, the more space we create for honesty, freedom, and real presence. I once spoke with a couple who had been married for 30 years. I asked them their secret. The husband smiled and said, "We give each other room to be who we are, even when it changes." That's not passive love. That's powerful love. The kind that trusts. The kind that doesn't cling. In Buddhism, this is what we call metta, loving kindness without attachment. A love that doesn't try to own or control, but simply wishes for the other's happiness, even when that happiness has nothing to do with us. It's love with open hands. Control says, "I'll love you if." Love says, "I love you even if." Control says, "You belong to me." Love says, "You're free and I choose you." Control says, "Don't leave." Love says, "If you stay, let it be real." So ask yourself, where are you gripping love too tightly? Are you trying to shape someone into who you want them to be, Instead of seeing who they really are you loving from fear or from trust? Love, like Wu Wei, is not about doing more. It's about allowing, listening, giving space for the other to show up as they are, not as we want them to be. And when both people feel safe enough to be fully themselves, something beautiful happens. Love stops being a transaction and starts being a truth. You don't need to force closeness. You only need to stop pushing it away with control. Let love breathe. Let it be soft. Let it surprise you. Calm decisions are always the best ones. We've all had moments where we rushed into a decision, said something we didn't mean, accepted something we didn't want, or jumped into something we weren't ready for. And almost always, we knew it. Deep down, something felt off, but the pressure was louder than the pause. In today's world, we're trained to believe that faster is better. Decide now. Move quickly. Don't miss out. But clarity doesn't live in chaos. Wisdom doesn't rise from urgency. The best decisions, the ones that feel aligned, steady, and true, almost always come from a place of calm. When your mind is racing, your emotions are high, and your breath is shallow, that's not the time to choose. Because what's driving the decision isn't presence, it's panic. And panic makes promises you can't keep. It says, do something now or everything will fall apart. But it's a lie. The truth is, when you're calm, you see more clearly. And when you see clearly, you choose wisely. Wu Wei teaches us that action doesn't need to be forced, that the right response arises naturally when we stop pushing. Like still water reflecting the sky, when your mind is quiet, your path becomes visible. You don't need to manufacture clarity. You just need to stop disturbing it. I once met a man who said he made the biggest mistake of his life by rushing into a career he didn't love. He admitted, he knew it didn't feel right, even during the interview. But he felt pressure. Pressure to be successful. Pressure to not disappoint. 10 years later, he left that job. Not because he failed, but because he finally stopped long enough to hear what he really wanted. Buddhism reminds us that wise action arises from mindfulness, from seeing things as they truly are, not as we fear or desire them to be. And to see clearly, we must be still. Calm is not weakness. It's intelligence. It's the space between impulse and response. The breath before the leap. The next time you're unsure what to do, don't force it. Sit with it. Feel it. Wait until the noise softens and something steady speaks. It may come in the shower, on a quiet walk, or in that moment between thoughts when you're not trying to figure it out at all. You don't need to rush your way into the right decision. You need to slow down enough to hear it. Because the best choices don't scream, they whisper, and you'll only hear them when you're calm. Letting go isn't giving up, it's waking up. Letting go is one of the hardest things we're asked to do, not because we don't want peace, but because we've been taught that holding on is strength, that effort equals love, that if we just try harder, fight longer, or care more, we can fix it. So we grip tighter. We stay in what hurts. We carry what's heavy. And when someone says, let it go, it feels like failure. But letting go isn't giving up. It's waking up. It's seeing clearly that your peace matters more than your pride. That not everything broken needs fixing. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, for others, is to release what no longer fits. In Buddhism, non-attachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's the wisdom to know what serves your path and what doesn't. It's the courage to step away, not in anger, but in love. To say, this is not for me anymore, and to walk on. Without bitterness. Wu Wei teaches the same. That flow doesn't happen when we force. It happens when we surrender to what is. When we stop pushing the river and start letting it carry us. I once spoke with a woman who stayed in a relationship far too long. She kept hoping things would change, that love would grow again if she just tried harder. But nothing changed except her. She grew tired, numb, quietly resentful. One day, she sat in silence, breathed deeply, and said, "I'm done fighting for something that won't meet me halfway." And in that moment, she didn't collapse, she rose. Not because she gave up, but because she finally let go. Letting go isn't about quitting. It's about choosing peace over pressure, freedom over fear, truth over illusion. It's about no longer negotiating with your own soul just to keep something that keeps costing you your joy. It's waking up to what you've known deep down, that clinging doesn't keep things close. It only creates suffering. When you let go, you're not abandoning responsibility. You're embracing reality. You're not closing your heart. You're unburdening it. You're not walking away from life. You're walking toward it, finally free to meet it as it is, not as you wish it to be. So if there's something heavy you've been holding, a story, a person, a version of yourself that no longer feels true, this is your permission to release it. Gently, without blame, without shame, because letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom, and it's not the end. It's the beginning of something far more honest, far more alive. Wu Wei and the Path of Inner Harmony. We spend so much of life trying to hold everything together, trying to be the perfect parent, partner, friend, achiever. We chase balance like it's something outside of us, something to be earned through schedules, systems, self-improvement. But balance was never meant to be forced. Inner harmony doesn't arrive because you control life. It arises when you stop fighting it. Wu Wei is not a technique. It's a shift in how we relate to the world. It's the art of aligning, not controlling. Allowing, not resisting. Letting go, not giving up. When we practice Wu Wei, we begin to act from presence, not pressure. We learn that what we used to call effort was often just fear in disguise. And what we thought was laziness might have been wisdom waiting to be heard. To walk the path of Wu Wei is to listen more deeply, not just to others, but to yourself. It's noticing when your body tightens, when your breath shortens, when your thoughts race. These are not signs that you need to push harder. They're invitations to soften. They're signals that you've been drifting out of alignment, trying to swim upstream in a river that was always meant to carry you. I met a woman who told me that for years she felt like she was doing everything right, but nothing felt right. She was always exhausted, even when she was winning. One day she stopped, not because she gave up, but because she couldn't keep living at war with herself. And in the quiet that followed, she began to hear her own voice again. That voice didn't scream. It whispered, and it said, "There's another way." Inner harmony doesn't mean everything outside you is perfect. It means you're no longer ruled by the chaos. It means you've made peace with the unknown. You've stopped needing every answer and started trusting the unfolding. You still act, but you don't overreact. You still care, but you don't cling. You still move, but you no longer rush. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes not from life itself, but from our resistance to it. And Taoism teaches that the river of life is already flowing. It's our clinging, our controlling, our ego that creates friction. Wu Wei is the space in between, the gentle, graceful place where we let go of resistance and meet life with ease. It's where the teachings of presence, acceptance, and wisdom become one movement. When you begin to live this way, not perfectly, but more gently, something inside you changes. You stop trying to fix every emotion. You stop arguing with the moment. You start living from your center, not from your wounds, your fears, or your past. You respond instead of react. You rest without guilt. You breathe, and it's enough. This is the path of inner harmony. Not absence of movement, but movement without struggle. Not silence of thought, but freedom from overthinking. Not control over life, but cooperation with it. Wu Wei isn't a place you arrive. It's the way you walk. And when you walk in harmony with life, life begins to walk with you. You were never meant to force life. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that the harder we try, the more we'll succeed. That life only rewards those who push, grind, and never stop moving. So we learn to chase, to control, to hustle. We build entire lives around effort, even when that effort begins to break us. But what if that belief is the very thing pulling us away from peace? You were never meant to force life. You were meant to flow with it. Look at the natural world. Trees don't strain to grow. They rise when the conditions are right. Rivers don't argue with rocks. They move around them, patiently shaping the land over time. The sun doesn't rush to rise, and still it never fails to shine. Everything in nature works in harmony with itself, not through force, but through alignment. And you, too, are nature. Wu Wei reminds us that we don't need to push so hard to live meaningfully. In fact, it teaches the opposite. The more we force, the more we suffer. Because forcing is rooted in fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of falling behind, fear of losing control. But life was never something to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced, one breath, one choice, one gentle moment at a time. I once met a man who spent decades trying to win at life. He had the accolades, the wealth, the perfect plan. But the more he tried to hold it all together, the more he felt it slipping through his fingers. Eventually, he said, "I don't think I ever lived. I just performed." That's what happens when life becomes a performance. We lose the part of us that was meant to simply live. Buddhism teaches that clinging creates suffering. And so much of our clinging is subtle. The way we hold on to timelines, identities, expectations. But when we release the need to force everything into shape, something incredible happens. Space opens up. Space for clarity. Space for calm. Space for life to unfold without constant interference. Letting go of force doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we start trusting. Trusting that what's meant for us will come. Trusting that we don't have to exhaust ourselves to be worthy. Trusting that life, in its own mysterious, unhurried way, is already carrying us forward. So if you're tired, maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because you've been swimming upstream for too long. And maybe the invitation now is not to try harder, but to let the current hold you. You were never meant to force life. You were meant to feel it, to move with it, to live it, fully, softly awake. A soft ending, a new beginning. This wasn't a journey about escaping life. It was a quiet return, from noise to stillness, from effort to ease, from forcing to flowing. Maybe somewhere along the way, you saw yourself in the stories, in the tension of always needing to push, in the quiet ache of wanting to rest, but feeling like you haven't earned it, or in that small, powerful moment when you finally exhaled and thought, "I don't have to try so hard." Wu Wei isn't a philosophy to memorize. It's a way of remembering how to listen again, how to move with the current of life instead of against it, how to let each moment be enough without needing to fix it, force it, or chase something else. And if something in this message touched a part of you that's been carrying too much, let this be your permission to put it down, to soften, to live a little slower, a little lighter, a little more awake. If this brought you even a moment of peace, consider staying on this path with us. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with someone who's been trying too hard, too long. And if you'd like to, leave a comment, a moment, a story, or a breath you remembered while watching. This isn't the end, just a pause, a gentle place between what was and what comes next. And as you step forward, may you walk softer, breathe deeper, and trust the rhythm of your own becoming. Until we meet again, may you live gently and let life flow.